Welcome to BlackBox Mobile. Today we have something a little bit different for you. And again, if you do like what you see, please like it. And if you want to subscribe, that would help too. It doesn't hurt, it's free, and it helps us out. And it lets us know that, hey, maybe people do like our stuff. But more importantly, do you guys remember that movie Back to the Future? And that one line, that iconic saying, you know that new sound you've been looking for? Well, listen to this. And it's basically, the sound of the future coming back to the past and making a big splash. Well, this is kind of the exact opposite. And instead of sound, it's more like design. So it would go something more like, hey, you know that new design you've been looking for? Well, it already exists. In fact, it's from the past. Without further ado, we're going to take a look back at the OnePlus 7 Pro 5G, and we're going to talk about why we think this is pretty much 2020's phone for design, and it came out in 2019. So stick around, hopefully you like what you see. Enjoy! While I don't think this is a big deal to me, I'm surprised it's not a lot to other people. Here's why. I remember the days when people would bring home a 50 or 60-inch screen TV, and if there was a speck of a blacked out pixel, people would be flaring like a pack of hemorrhoids, calling the retailer or the manufacturer, and they wouldn't settle until the issue was fixed, usually resulting in a TV replacement. Today, many of us watch stuff on our phones like we did on our TVs. So remember, 60 inches, small spec, unacceptable. Today, 6-inch screen with a notch or a hole punch? Sure, why not? Again, to me, it's no big deal, but when you really think about it, does it really make sense to shrink your bezels so thin that you have to house a camera in the screen? Selfies are great, but when you're done using the camera, it's still there. When you're watching a movie, browsing the web, YouTube, you get it. Anyways, enough ranting, but I needed to do it in order to make a point. OnePlus, along with a few other manufacturers, have already solved this problem. Well, they did last year. So, let's start where it makes most sense. The 2019 released OnePlus Pro 5G is arguably one of the better designs of even 2020. This also includes the OnePlus 8 Pro, or T for that matter. With a 6.67-inch fluid AMOLED display with QHD resolution and a 90Hz refresh rate, this super thin curved edge-to-edge design is extremely fashionable. Looking at the right side of the phone, you have your power button and a little slider with 3 settings. Slide up for silence, the middle for vibrate, and all the way for just your sound. It's actually textured, so you know exactly where your finger is when it's on it. I gotta admit, when I first heard about this feature, I honestly thought it was the most useless thing ever. But after using it, it's actually become one of my most used features. And a couple of other of us who have tested it use it on a daily basis. Something as simple as engaging into a conversation with someone, having your phone in your pocket and just sliding up that little slider just to silence your phone without taking it out or turning it on, is just satisfying. Turn the phone to the left and you got your volume rockers, and on the bottom, your speaker grill, your USB-C dock, 2 mics, and your SIM card tray. No expandable storage, but our model has 256. Sadly, there's also no headphone jack, but if you have a dongle, you can make do. Looking at the top, you're welcomed by another mic and the pop-up camera. Yes, that wonderful pop-up camera. Turn the phone around to its back, and you got your OnePlus logo and a tri-camera setup. So you get your 48 megapixel wide angle camera and then a 16 megapixel ultra wide. and a 3x optical 8 megapixel telephoto lens. Well, it's actually a 13 megapixel lens that crops in at 3 times, so it's kind of like giving you 8 megapixel lossless results. It's a bit of a mislead, but it has been clarified. Some super basic specs without getting too specific. Here we go. The processor is a Snapdragon 855. Our model has 8 gigs of RAM with 256 gigabytes of storage. Also, this, I believe, was the first phone in North America with UFS 3.0 memory storage. It's got plenty of power, and oh yeah, this variant has 5G.
Let's talk sound. You know that new sound you've been looking for? I'm not going to do that to you guys. The stereo speakers on here are kicked up with Dolby Atmos. This phone does two things really well. It gets loud and it sounds clear. Might not have the most bass or surround sound to it, but overall, as a package, it does really well. So hopefully you can hear this, have a listen, let me know what you think.
Fly into your settings under sound and vibration, and you'll notice a little Dolby Atmos icon. You can click into that and it gives you scenario-based enhancements. So you get 3 settings: dynamic, which optimizes the sounds based on what you're listening to; movie for more realistic surround sounds and clear dialogue, like you're probably not getting from me now; and lastly, music for a fuller, more nuanced sound, and this is more for effects. Strap on some headphones and you get even more preferences, giving you an equalizer and something called intelligent style, giving you 3 other sound profiles for those ears of yours. So you got balance, warm, and nuanced. You can play around with those to see what they sound like. So yeah, you don't get the 3.5 headphone jack, but again, if you have a dongle lying around, the output sound should satisfy any casual user, and probably some serious audiophiles too. When it comes to the cameras, this is one of the most oddest results that usually ends up in a mixed bag. So, are the cameras good? They can be incredibly good. Can be. They can also be so off, and I'll explain what I mean. When it comes to clarity and a clean shot, the OnePlus can pull this off. It's the color and saturation results that vary. It's so odd, even some pictures result in such clear looking results, but cropping in shows like softness and discoloration. It's like the software is trying to give you a little bit of everything, and that's not always a good thing. Lights can get really light and darks get super dark, almost blacking out all the details. But the details are still there. If you use the editor that's provided in the phone, you can make some adjustments and pull back some of the missing details. We notice this comparing to some other smartphones. In low light, in a far off distance, the OnePlus would almost completely black out a room in the background, whereas the competition would show you jackets and some other items inside. Again, play with the editor and the camera on the OnePlus is capturing the data, but the software gets so aggressive that it just blacks it out. But tones and colors aside, the phone can still make some beautiful looking shots. One real strong feature we found with the 7 Pro is the depth of field looks really good. It does a great job of showing you how far things are from one another. We notice how it just gradually blurs out the background as well. It doesn't go full throttle on something that isn't the main subject. Also, taking some photos when light comes into play, like a light post or the sun, we found the camera seemed to contain lens flare very well. So overall, the 48 megapixel main camera lens has a few issues, but it's still among the better cameras out there. With all the updates also given with this camera for the OnePlus 7 Pro, it does show that OnePlus is putting in some effort. The new 17mm 117-degree ultra-wide-angle lens works well, especially in daytime. It also shares the same similarities as the main lens, Shots come out fairly clear, but obviously with less detail in comparison, and they are a bit softer. At night, noise is apparent, but it's not overwhelmingly so. Shooting on the same subject with all three lenses can sometimes lead to a color shift. We find many manufacturers have this issue. The telephoto lens is also decent. It actually takes some pretty clean shots most of the time. There is some loss of detail when zooming in after taking a picture from subjects depending on how far you are from them, but overall the quality is good. Especially when you consider that manufacturers now are opting out of inputting telephoto lenses anyways, keeping only the wide-angle lens. Video is where things start to get interesting. Let's just start with the bad. The microphones are way too sensitive, capturing more background noise than we'd like. Although it still captures your voice even when you're speaking at a low volume. Sometimes we did notice too color shifting when filming, especially in clouds in the background, because the camera is always focusing and readjusting itself. Speaking of focusing, let's focus on the good. And we'll start with focusing. It's amazing for still and video. This camera catches onto subjects really quickly. Something close, it's on it. Move to the background, it's on it. Go back, and it's refocusing with no issues. Just like focusing, video stabilization is amongst the best we've tested. Even without its super stable mode, the 7 Pro manages to remain very stable when in motion. Video is smooth at 1080p or 4K. Throw in super stable mode and start running, and this little camera does wonders. In daylight, of course. At night, everything becomes grainy and shaky. During the day, it's really something else to watch the software work though. You can run and shake your camera while doing it, and it will keep everything relatively level. It's nice to notice a difference. Cameras overall do suffer at night with noticeable noise, and at 60 frames per second, the results get even darker. But they definitely don't do a bad job, it's just not the best. Now, the pop-up camera is one of my favorite features about this phone because it does two things. One, it's a good conversational piece. Listening to the camera engage up and down is so cool, fun, and reliable. It seems like good components went into the mechanics of the selfie camera. Second reason, as already stated, it rids the need of a hole punch or a notch. The 16 megapixel selfie takes good photos. Video is only at 1080p, but it does a decent job at shooting it. Just wishing it wouldn't crop in so much while in video mode. The pop-up camera overall reacts quick. Speaking of quick, this leads us to our next segment, charging. In the box, you get what OnePlus calls warp charging. It's fast. Plug it in and you're at 50% in just under 30 minutes. After around 80%, the charge starts to slow down in order not to harm the battery. So we got to full in around an hour and 20 minutes. The point around warp charging is the actual charger takes most of the heat, literally, so it can transfer the juice to the phone while the battery temperature doesn't get too high. 90 Hz refresher rate while in QHD is a pleasure to experience. Amazing, after only 1 year, so many manufacturers are already pushing 120. Is it all really needed? No. But does it make things smoother? Yes. Does it also drain your battery? Also yes. So there are trade-offs, but with OnePlus software being so smooth, adding the extra refresher rate just makes sense. The cool thing is OnePlus doesn't limit anything when it comes to this. So Samsung, for example, on their Note 20 at 120 Hz has to drop back QHD to 1080p. We understand why they're doing this, for battery savings obviously, but you lose out on the options that are already given to you by OnePlus. In reality though, 1080p or QHD on a 6 or 7 inch screen isn't really that big of a deal. Please don't let people talk you into specs. Apple, as much as I hate saying this, has been proving this theory wrong for years. And even their new iPhone 12 Pro Max is only capped at 60 Hz. Oh yeah, and there's no wireless charging either. Oh well, and no IP water and dust ratings, but our test showed this phone could handle a little splish splash with no issue. It's scary considering the movable pop-up camera, but it doesn't seem to harm it. So, after all this, who is this phone for? Anyone who enjoys a smooth experience with little interruptions, someone who appreciates design, and of course people who like looking at the whole picture. Get it? Get it? Thanks for watching.